I'm Sydney Kane.
And I'm Liza Petrov.
And you're listening to Page Fright, where we talk about writing craft, the ins and outs of the publishing industry, and our own personal journeys as authors. So let's dive in. So I have been prepping for the Oscars.
Yeah.
I have been watching the movies that are nominated for Best Picture.
Okay. I can't wait.
I've recently watched Begonia.
Oh, that's one of my favorite movies of the year.
I loved it. I loved it so much.
I'm so happy.
She is such an amazing actress. I cannot believe he did not get nominated for...
It's incredible.
I mean, his acting was unreal.
Yeah. What's his name? Jesse Plemons?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a travesty that he wasn't nominated because he steals the show.
He does. He does.
Yeah.
And I was thinking he's so believable. If I was around him, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, these aliens, they're coming, you know?
I loved the deadpan, ultra serious way he talks. Every scene that he does with his nephew. Is it his nephew or his cousin?
I think it's his cousin. Yeah.
His cousin. I saw it a while ago. Every scene he does with his cousin is heartbreaking. And it's so beautifully written because you watch it and you go, I mean, everything's calm. They like each other. The cousin believes in Jesse Plemons and Jesse Plemons believes in what he's doing and everything. But, when he starts talking about, chemical castration and how important it is, and the cousin is just like, absolutely. My heart just broke.
Well, it broke my heart.
I thought it was beautiful.
It broke my heart when he was like, but I wanted to be with someone one day. That line got me. I don't know if this is fact, but somebody told me that the character who plays that has autism in real life, and they just held open auditions and he came in. So I don't know if that's true, but I heard that.
I mean, I loved him. I thought he did a great job.
He did.
He was a real high point of the movie. Every time he was on screen, your heart went out to him. He's so authentic. Yeah, just the other point of it is just like I felt like there are a few movies that when it comes to the writing, they really drilled into this past year. There are a few movies that really drilled into what it has felt like to exist in our current ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one of them where there's so much information out there and you start to question what is real, what is not. Like there is a torture scene in this movie and you're in it going, could she be an alien?
Yeah.
When you start to wonder, puts you into that headspace that many people are in nowadays, reading the news, going, what is true, what is not? How do I interpret this world event? How should I vote considering this world event? Should I vote at all? It really puts you into that mindset and shows you how difficult a time we are living in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I loved it.
Well, on the micro level, just the relationship between Teddy and Dawn, there's that manipulation there and the gaslighting and just pulling him into something that he kind of feels is icky, but he loves his cousin. He doesn't want to make him feel bad. So he's kind of following along. And then he takes us out to like this macro level of like mass manipulation. And so I love how it played out in parallel with those two aspects.
Yes, I completely agree. Like all the shots, all those beautiful shots of Jesse Plemons' character and his mother.
Yeah.
And how, they were very short, but they were big. They punched you.
Mm-hmm.
And you could understand his emotional state in the way that he was thinking. And I don't want to ruin the movie about like what was true and what was not in it for any audience members, but I do recommend it wholeheartedly. Yeah, I loved it.
And I think it's also beautiful when you're thinking of story structure about how this story, this horror, there's the hook. He captures this woman who he thinks is an alien. Okay, that's the hook.
Yeah.
But then the deeper meaning, all the symbolism and all of these different arcs. And I just think that is my favorite thing about horror is it's never just the story. You can never take it at face value. And that is what I think is so beautiful about horror.
I completely agree. Oh, you're slip sliding into our main topic today. Well, first we have to do our wait, what? and I don't remember what it is. What is it, Sydney?
First of all, that was very beautifully done with our wait, what?
Yeah,
And
thank you.
is it okay to write about a topic that we're just learning about?
Okay, yes, I remember this one. Yes.
Any
Is
initial
it okay?
thoughts?
Well, of course. Of course it's okay. I mean, I don't disagree with I understand, like, okay, so we met at a editors and agents conference here in Texas, and I went to a, history author, like historical fiction panel, and there were a lot of questions about research, and there were a lot of good answers given by the authors about how thoroughly and, like, directly in person they conducted all of their research, and they only use primary sources and all of that jazz. But I left going, yeah, I mean, it's really important to, especially when you're writing in historical fiction, to get your 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 knowledge up to snuff.
Mhm.
Um, but if you're writing in a different type of genre that's not directly historical fiction, I think that it's important to learn as you go, but it will make your writing better the more you know. It'll give it more flavor. You'll find out little details of the subject matter that you didn't know about before. Like those details will change your story. They
Mhm.
will impact it and make it better, make it feel more real. But I don't think that just because you don't know about a subject before you start writing about it, that should stop you, ever. I think
Agree.
you can use writing as your tool to learn a great deal about many things.
Mhm. I also think that there are scenarios where you don't really need to know anything about that. I'm thinking for horror, I write about people being murdered all the time, and I have no experience at all in that area.
You've never been murdered, Sydney?
No, and I've never murdered,
There we go.
but my characters do it in all sorts of different fashions. I think it's almost like a thought experiment. And we keep coming back to this idea of being able to have empathy for your characters and for your story. And everything that you write always has a string of empathy and trying to put yourself in a person's shoes. And so I may not have any experience in murdering someone or being a victim or a victim's family, but I can imagine myself in their shoes. I can think about stories that I've heard from other people and then write from almost like this outsider perspective, and that will eventually lead me into being in this insider perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, I don't know, I think sometimes or like if I'm thinking of one of our author friends, Erica, she writes one of her characters in jail, and this topic came up in our discussion, remember? And I was saying, "Well, have you ever been in jail?" Because she was worried about, not being able to write a different aspect, but she could write another thing that she didn't know. And so I just think sometimes you just don't need to know. And I think that's a controversial take because a lot of people are always like, write what you know. But we don't
Yeah.
know most things that we write.
Yes. Okay. So I agree with this partially. I absolutely agree that you can't stick with only writing what you know. Obviously, like you can write about someone who's in jail and you've never gone to jail yourself. I do think that and so there's that. There's also another layer of knowing your audience and what they want. So let's take the murder example. There are different types of readers. So there are readers who are looking for a good romp. They're looking for a James Bond type of murder where it's just like the gunshot goes off, the guy goes down. It's kind of it's fun, it's a spy thriller, it's whimsical, and that's what they want. They want something like that. Or they're looking for like the kind like wacky horror murder that you see on Friday the 13th, for example, is silly. It's not necessarily super realistic. You're not drilling into what it means to murder. You're there for the entertainment value. And then there's a type of audience that they are literally there to try to experience the thing. And so it comes down to, as an author, what are you selling yourself as? Are you selling yourself as an author who is writing to entertain people only? And like, that is really, really hard to do. To be a good entertainer is really difficult, and to do it in writing is difficult. It takes so much ability. And I say all that because it has so much worth, and I really wanna express that. And it's like, okay, you're gonna be writing some of those less serious, less realistic, you're not going there for the realism murders. But if you are selling yourself as a historical fiction writer, for
Mhm.
example,
Mhm.
if you're selling yourself as, someone that is gonna be talking about the philosophy of the murder and the repercussions it has on a small community and da da da, like going into the deep questions about it,
Mhm.
then your research becomes very helpful.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't have to have done it in person, but research and reading what firsthand accounts have said about it becomes really important, not just for you, but for the reader, because that's what the reader's there for.
Definitely.
So,
I'm thinking of, like, Diana Gabaldon with Outlander. She won all sorts of awards for her, like, knowledge of the Highlanders and all of that, and the
mhm, mhm.
Scottish warriors and of the
Yeah.
war. That has given me something to think about because we have such different styles, and I love that about us because it gives us so many things to talk about. Because as you know, I don't like to do a lot of research, which is why I primarily write locations that I've been to. I do big things that I know, but then on the person level, although I guess I have a background in psychology, so I have a close, intimate relationship with people and their
Mhm,
behaviors. So
mhm.
maybe I do know. This is giving me
Yeah.
a different idea. Maybe I'm wrong with my opinion. I should change it. That I think you should.
No, obviously, we all come in with our own sets of expertise. There's that, and that's why they recommend to authors to write what you know,
Yeah.
because everyone has an interesting perspective to bring to the table. It's just a question of how do you conduct yourself when you're specifically writing about something that you don't know firsthand.
Mhm.
And then everybody gets a little queasy,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, what should I do?"
Yeah. Yeah, because everyone's so afraid to offend.
Yeah. Yeah. People, including myself, like you get really scared to write something down and you have to write it authoritatively when you're writing fiction or nonfiction. Like you write it like it's real. You write it like you mean it. Otherwise, why are you writing it? And so it can be a little, I don't know, uncomfortable if someone comes in and says, "Hey, you said this thing so authoritatively. It's wrong. I know it's wrong, and here's why." And it can feel embarrassing. You, as the person who's writing it, can anticipate that embarrassment, and then, like, you're like, "Oh, should I write this?" Just say, "Just do it. Screw it. Just do
Yeah.
it."
I'm thinking too with books that it makes sense for you not to know. Then it adds another layer of authenticity. If you have a
Mm.
character going into a situation that they actually don't know a lot about, but if I know a lot about it, maybe I'm going to be imbuing that into my character and then it won't make sense for my character. Like maybe my character really shouldn't know a lot about it and we should both be newbies going into it trying to discover it together.
I mean, I think that that's kind of a method acting approach to writing, this method writing, and I say do it as well. Like, that could produce something really interesting. It could produce something that doesn't work. It could also produce something that really works gangbusters, and people are like, "I love this character. She really did feel like an outsider, to this specific situation." I'm not sure. For me, I need to get this right. I need to I need to get this down, and it actually helps me to know a lot because then I can understand I can I can sorta, like, for lack of a better term, twist the knife, which is
Mhm.
just bring out more irony in the person's lack of knowledge. So if I know what is the worst thing for them not to know, they can walk into a more dramatic situation,
Yeah.
like, in a specific place where, like, "I've researched it. You never wanna go into a saloon wearing a black hat," or whatever. I
Uh-huh.
don't know, like, something like that, and then so my character can wear the black hat. My
Uh-huh.
character can commit the faux pas,
Yeah.
and I can do it very strategically,
Oh, I
and
love that.
thus foreshadow appropriately, and thus cause, like, a lot of discomfort and
Mhm.
strain in my
Mhm.
reader. That's kind of how I would approach it,
That's a
but
great
I understand the method acting, though. Like,
Yeah.
I think it can be fun too.
Well, I was thinking too when you said a couple weeks ago that sometimes you can't read when you're writing because you'll get someone else's words in your head. Sometimes I feel like that's true for me with research is if I research something, now that's how I see it. And I want to create a new experience for the reader. And maybe, like, for example, a jail cell. If I know exactly what a jail cell looks like, then I'm going to have a hard time imagining something new because now I have that vision in my head. But I know, based on my psychology background, what people's biggest fears in a jail might be. And so if I'm able to pull those strings and think about what's the worst thing I can imagine a jail to be, because most readers don't really know what a jail could look
Yeah.
like in different areas. So if I'm creating this place, this magical jail cell, and I'm able to think of people's worst fears and what I know about people, then it's almost like a blank page where I have no preconceived notions, nothing that's already clouding my vision, and I can just create my own thing.
Yeah. I I completely get that, and that kind of brings us to our original conversation about, genre.
Mm,
It does depend on the genre that you're writing for that to work.
totally.
So, what you just described kind of makes me think of science fiction, makes me think of fantasy, where like you might be coming up with a totally new jail that doesn't exist anywhere in the
Yeah.
world, and
Yeah.
there's no point in matching it. You want to create something out of your own head that really like makes people nervous or unhappy or sad about the character's predicament, about what's going to happen, what's going to come around the corner, and you don't want to get the real world in the way of your fantastical vision. But if you're talking about historical fiction, there are readers that read historical fiction purely because they want to know what Sing Sing was like in the year 1927, you know? And it's just like, okay, well, then I need to know what color the beds were.
Yeah.
Like if they were rusty metal frames, like what did they paint them originally? Was it blue? Was it off green? I'm the kind of person that's just like, I need to know that. And like you can find out really important things about like, okay, what did they do with dead prisoners? Where did
Yeah.
they bury them? Did they cremate them? I had to learn that at some point to understand the anatomy of the crime that I was creating. So, like in my story, there is in my book, there's a slow uncovering of, horrific past deeds.
Mhm.
But for those horrific past deeds to make sense, like, and to be entertaining to the reader that I'm trying to bring in, it needs to be grounded in reality,
Mhm.
and, I mean, you can go too far, but for me, it's like, okay, well, it depending on the rules of the day, the laws
Yeah.
of the day, certain crimes can happen and certain crimes can't. Like, they literally are not against the law, and you have to know those things in order to make something that is, I don't know, that's what I'm going for. That
Yeah.
might not be what someone else is going for, though.
Yeah.
That's the key.
This is what I love about our discussions because I never even considered that because I write in such a different genre where it is
Yeah.
grounded, especially my thrillers, mostly in reality, but I really push the bounds of
You
reality.
do, I love it.
So I can make up a lot of things. If I don't know it,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, I'm just gonna make it up." And that's what I love about writing. It's my world I'm creating, but you're writing these stories from such a different place that I think is also so exciting. Like, that takes such a different set of talent and skill for you to be able to create these realistic worlds of the past in modern day, and that's why I love, love, love these talks because I never even considered that before, but that is such a cool technique. And this is why I think sometimes writers get so confused because the answer is usually to any craft question, any question in writing at all, it's usually always, it depends. And this is
Yes.
why, because there's so many different avenues and genres and stories and what you're going for. So I think this is a really good concrete example of it depends with giving an example of it depends on the genre if you need to
Mhm.
know it or not. And so
Agreed.
that is such a
Agreed.
fascinating take. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And I agree. I really enjoy these conversations too because you come in from such a different perspective and also such a different writer's urge. Like you have this creative urge where you're like, I want to create something that is wholly my own and I want to push the bounds of that. And there are going to be so many readers that are going to love to experience that and to read what you write. I mean, I'm one of them. I love it.
Thank you.
But to the point that I'm making about, knowing who your audience is going to be and what they're looking for and how you're
Mhm.
selling yourself, I think that that's the real answer to the "it depends" question, where it's just like, it all depends on what you're saying, what you're promising the reader.
That's why it's really important to figure out why you love writing and what you wanna create, because then it all will come very naturally and easily to you, because I know that's not my strength. I do not care, like, the realistic things that happened. I'm there for whatever tale you're spinning, I'm there for it. I'm
Mhm.
gonna I'm gonna
Yeah.
be in it all the way. Whatever you tell
Mhm.
me is truth, I'm gonna believe it unless I suspect it's an unreliable narrator, then I will not.
And then you're gonna have fun doing that.
Exactly, exactly. But yours, you've actually reading your work has given me a whole new appreciation because I normally don't read in the genre that you write. And I have been really, really enjoying it, and I think you've kind of turned me a little into reading that type.
Ooh. Yay! I
You would
mean,
be pleased to see my Kindle right now.
you're gonna have to show me later.
Okay.
But, I mean, I'm really excited that you say that because that's one of my genre blending goals is that I really did want to invite the kind of reader that likes to read harder history, uh, but kind of wishes that there might have been a little bit more, human plot romance element to it, uh, into this book. And I wanted to invite someone that is more into like upmarket fiction, whether it's romance or thrillers or horror or something else where it's just like it's a little bit more genre-y to
Mhm.
basically go, "Here here's a little bit more concreteness. You're gonna
Yes.
exist in a slightly more realistic world than you usually do. But you're still gonna get all of the fun stuff that you usually do. It's
Yes.
just gonna come at you in a slightly more, I don't know,
Sophisticated.
realized." Yes, thank you. I don't wanna say that
I'll
myself,
say it
but
for you.
thank you. But, yeah, so that's my goal with it. I do have one craft tip with this
Okay.
if
Let's
you're
hear it.
interested.
I am. Let's hear it, baby.
Yeah, so this is for writers who are like, "Gulp," like, I really wanna be on point with my information, my research, but it's slowing me down, and
Hmm.
I'm finding it really difficult to get through my writing and the word count that I wanna get through in a day. So you want something to happen, right? You want your character to move in a specific way. You want them to do a specific action. You want them to go to a specific place. So, but you keep on getting stopped by not knowing all of the specifics about what that action should be in this world that you're writing, that you want to be accurate, or that place, what it should be, or what, the name of the technology should be, or the name of a specific governmental entity or something like that. Like you really want to say specifics in your writing. You want it to come up clear and convincing that you know what you're talking about, but you're in the early drafts and you're just trying to get the plot out. So what I do, and maybe other readers agree with me, or not readers, maybe other writers also do this, is I will just write the section out. And if it's a street name, if it's a person's name, if it's a governmental entity's name, anything that can be left blank, I just put in brackets and I say like the general category of what that should be. So I'm like, she drove down street name and ended up at street name, or ended up at famous restaurant from like this is the restaurant that she absolutely would have gone to in this year. like
Wow.
like that's kind of how I break it down. Or it's just like I want my character to end up in a historically recognizable spot or historically believable spot. I haven't done the research yet, but I know she's going to end up there. So why don't I just write the sentence down, leave that section blank, and then when I have that draft, I do the research, I figured out all the stuff, and then I go through, I command find all my brackets, and I fill in everywhere that they should go. And if there's any sort of extra detailing that I want to do around it, then I will add a few sentences. If it changes anything, it's fine, but I still at least have my anchor points and I can do some heavy duty editing after. At least I didn't stop myself from just getting it
Yeah,
down on the page. So
that's
that's
fabulous
how I do it.
advice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very valuable.
Yeah.
I might steal that for myself. I mean, I don't ever really run into that, but if I do, I'm gonna use that advice.
It's a long bit of craft advice, but it's worked for me.
No, I actually yeah, I think that's gonna be really helpful to a lot of our listeners.
Let's move on to our main act. So, is your favorite genre taboo? We want to take a deeper look at book genres and ask the question, are some more acceptable than others? And what makes them less acceptable? What makes some more acceptable? So Sydney, I wanted to really dive into some of our favorite genres this week, ones that are viewed kind as less literary, less serious, horror for one, romance, fantasy, and we can explore some others that have become high literature. Like, I think that there are sci-fi books that are considered to be very serious. But yeah, I wanted to get your opinion on, what makes a genre less or more serious to readers?
That's a tough one. So I think that there's 2 different questions there, like what makes a story more serious and what makes a story taboo. And what makes a story more serious, that is a tougher one for me to answer. But what makes it taboo, I think, are things that make people uncomfortable, topics that people are afraid to talk about. So, one of the things I see as a psychologist in homes is that there's so many topics and family secrets that are off limits to people. And I see that translated into books. So, for example, if a family member has really, really serious mental health problems like depression or suicidal ideation, a lot of times the family members are afraid to address that because they're afraid if I say this out loud, if we talk about it, it'll make it more real. If I talk about your suicidal ideation, then you might do it.
Okay.
Which actually what we see in research is the more you talk about it, the more seen that other person feels, the more connection they feel, the more empathy you can have, and it facilitates this environment of safety, and actually the person is less likely to die from suicide by having these discussions. So, well, even in therapy, in therapy we spend a lot of time breaking down these myths that actually you should be asking your depressed partner every day, how are your suicidal thoughts? Are they becoming more serious? Have you thought of how you would do it? What can I do to help you? Can we create plans for when you're having these thoughts more for like safety plans for you? And so I think I see that translated into things like banned books or books that have these more taboo topics. It's that people think, and we saw this in last week's episode in the Hunger Games, where she felt like we shouldn't be sending these messages into our youth's brains of these kids dying and fighting each other to the death because of this society. Is that if we talk about it, it'll bring it this will bring it into fruition.
Yes. I
And
mean, I think that that's a general misconception
yeah.
with a lot of media. You have famous examples like Marilyn Manson right after the Columbine shootings. I mean, the shootings were horrible, but
Mhm.
there are so many questions buzzing around. Did video games, did dark music cause this?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's interesting how people believe that art can make real things in life come true,
Yeah.
and how it relates to what you just said with how, people just think even voicing any sort of discussion or worry or concern about suicidal ideation, for example, can possibly make your loved one do that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, like Handmaid's Tale, a banned book because of, the messages it sends. But really, these books that talk about the hard subjects are ones that we should be talking about the most because just because we're not speaking about them doesn't mean that they aren't there. We're still thinking them. We just don't feel safe to talk about them out loud. And so I think that's my major issue with these taboo books is because even if they are, I wrote down some like incest, hurting animals, rape, graphic violence, fertility issues, all of these things are hard to talk about, but they really happen and they
Yeah,
happen all the time. So
yeah.
let's just lay all our eggs on the table. And is that the right expression? Lay all
I
our,
don't know.
I think I'm mixing expressions.
Lay all our cards on the table.
Cards on the table. Eggs in
But
your
we could do it
basket.
with eggs.
Yeah, yeah. Let's lay our hard-boiled eggs on the table
Let's boil them, let's peel them, and let's lay them on the table.
and add some salt for good measure. And
Hey.
let's just talk about it. So that's where I'm coming from with taboo books. So what is your thoughts on these genres and
Yeah,
that issue?
I think that so there's an approach to there's approach to thinking about this with taboo books. There's an approach to talking about taboo books and, and I don't think that you were doing this at all. Some people watching us talk about this might go, "Oh, okay, so then it's okay as long as they're serious." As long as they're making some sort of serious commentary
Mm,
on the subject matter. Whereas, you have I'm gonna bring up Stephen King, for
okay.
example. So Stephen King, in an interview I saw recently of him, I think it was back in the '80s, like, he was defending writing horror in the way that he did, where people would accuse him of enjoying the horrible things he would do to your grandma, for example, on the page. And there is an element of entertainment,
Mhm,
that comes from reading horror that is not necessarily just very seriously, mournfully understanding that sometimes horrible things happen to people. There is an element of enjoyment that people get very confused about
mm,
and guilty about,
yeah,
and shamed, and they wanna shame other people about it too, and you can see him in this interview saying like, "Look, I wanna write about doing this to your grandma, I don't wanna do it to your grandma," like, obviously,
mhm,
and that doesn't mean that it's bad. Like, there have been accusations of horror being akin to pornography, where you it's it's something that's just very, very low, It's not like, if you enjoy it, then you're liking something that is just so outside of what is acceptable,
mhm,
and you are not interacting with it in the normal, acceptable way.
mhm.
And I don't know, I'm just really fascinated by uh this dilemma that we face with our entertainment, because it's like, I think on one level, I think you put it really well. Like, on one level you need to voice these things in order to make them less frightening for yourself.
Mhm. It's like taking we talked about this with dark romance, how women are taking their power back with dark romance and why they enjoy that. And I wonder if there's some people digest darker content in different ways. Some people like the more serious, hard-hitting talks, and some people want it to be in a more approachable way, like in a horror story where we see graphic violence, but it's told in a way that's easier to watch because it's a story, it's interesting, it's gripping. It's touching on these subjects but it's helping you get to those dark feelings that you're feeling on the inside and address them in a way that's easier to manage, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I agree. I feel like there's so many avenues to go down
Well,
with
like
this question
think of
too.
think of stand-up comedy, okay? They
Uh-huh.
say some of the
Okay.
most egregious things and they're
They
talking
do.
about
Yeah.
such dark things, but they're making light of it. They're laughing
Yeah.
about it. You know,
Yeah.
it's just because that's a more non-serious entertainment way of addressing those issues. It's still addressing it and maybe those people don't want the darkness side of it. They want to find the levity in it for them to cope. I think we all have these different ways of coping with the world around us and it shouldn't be done with censorship. It should be with however you want to express it to get out your emotions in whatever way you need.
Mhm. Yeah, like, I think that comedy really comes from shared tragedy,
Mhm.
where if you can, as a comic, kind of point out what a lot of people agree is either wrong with the world, or some sort of shared pain that's just like, "Oh, yeah, I had this happen to me when I was walking down the street. You had that happen to you too? My god. Okay." Like, we have some kind of shared connection. It's really interesting to go from a reader's perspective and go, "Oh, is it right for me to read this?" And then it's interesting to think, okay, well, I'm the writer of this. Is it right for me to write this? Are there any boundaries that I should be abiding by? And that's a big one for me. It's like, okay, well, I'm writing in this topic. Should I stop myself from going too far? What is too far?
Yeah.
When am I indulging too much?
Mhm.
When does it take away from the story?
I think it's a sad world to have to think that. I was reading just about taboo subjects and some of the comments people were saying, and one of them was like, "I don't wanna see the whole rape scene." that happens to a woman. Why should you if this rape is something that maybe this author has experienced, maybe it's happened to people this author knows, this author wants to express to you what this rape scene is like. And who are you to tell this author that they can't write it in the way that they want? And I understand it can be very triggering for some people that have experienced sexual violence, and I can understand that. And I definitely think trigger warnings should be written at the beginning of it. But if we start censoring authors and telling them they can't write certain things, then we're not going to have genuine art out there. It's going to be covered with this rosy film where we're beating around the bush and not getting to the hard hitting issues.
Mhm. Well, so I have two things to say to that.
Okay.
One is a question that's gonna send us down a tangent. So I think I'm gonna do that one first. So, do you think that trigger warnings can sometimes get in the way of plot? Do you think that trigger warnings can give away too much? Like, have you ever experienced this where you see a trigger warning, like, okay, you're watching a television show, and then one episode, they give you a trigger warning about suicide. And you're like,
Mhm.
well, I know what's going to happen in this episode.
Yeah.
I want the trigger warnings to be optional because I want to not read any of them. Like, that's me
Mhm.
personally.
Mhm.
I don't want it to be like a thing that's just like, you have to watch this. I feel like they should be something that's just like, if you like trigger warnings, if you prefer them, you should be able to go here and see a whole list of things that might bother you.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see why you would want that because some people don't want to experience a story and enter it with a open mind and not have an understanding of like what might be happening. I'm like you where I don't want to know
Mhm.
because I feel like sometimes I won't read a story if I know a certain subjects in it.
Yeah.
For me, I won't read really anything with child loss or I won't watch it either. But sometimes I feel like maybe I should be like pushed to like it's like probably a form of avoidance for me. And so maybe I should like encourage myself to read those things. So and I wonder too, like, what's the purpose of those trigger warnings? Is it really to protect the psychology of the people reading, or is it to protect them legally? I don't understand like the intention of that
Mhm.
necessarily.
Yeah. I don't I like I mean, from what I've seen is that it can help, you know, it can help individuals who have experienced past traumas to navigate the world better and feel like they're not going to get any like terrible surprises
Hmm.
during the day that's going to trigger you know, a horrible emotional reaction in them just when they were trying to have some fun, you know? And I can understand that point of view. I can understand their point of view in wanting to have some feeling of safety as they go through the world. It's just something that, like, when you're creative, you have to navigate that because you're the one ultimately deciding what you want to put into your art, and
Hmm.
you can't you can't cater to everybody. Otherwise, it's not going to be a truthful representation of your vision.
Hmm. Hmm.
I wanted to ask, and it's not just about, you know, reading taboo things. It's more like, are there particular genres that are considered unserious? Meaning, like, not capable of being literature. So, like when people talk about romance, like, this is one of the things that stopped me from telling relatives that I wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a romance book. That's what I wanted to write. And I was nervous about telling my relatives that I wanted to write a book that was essentially a type of book that a lot of people scoff at. A lot of people think aren't serious. I think that women's fiction gets labeled with this. I think horror gets labeled with this. Fantasy gets labeled with this, unless you're Tolkien, for example. But it's to me, it's kind of this. I don't know if it's a crippling question for other people. This is part of my page right of whether my work can be considered serious or not. Is this something that should change? Is it something that I should just accept?
This is a tough one for me because I have such a strong opinion that if you finished a book and you've published it, it's serious. So I don't have that opinion. But I do see that there are some books that are more highly revered. Like we're
Mhm.
talking like the classics or
Yeah.
certain books.
I mean, but there's certain books that come out and people are, like,
Yeah.
automatically like, "This is a book." You know?
Yeah.
This is a real book. And there are some books that come out and people don't necessarily regard it with the same amount of respect.
You're right. You know what? This is something I've never thought about before. And now that you've brought this to my attention, I am full of rage because you are absolutely correct. Those are the ones that win all the awards. Those are the ones that are like on these like big celebrity book clubs.
Mhm.
All right, now I'm irked. Now I'm irked thinking about this.
I mean, I think that there are several layers to it. I do think that there's a lot of women's fiction out there that is not considered serious. It's not considered to be dealing with real world heavy duty topics, even though like a lot of the times those books are just dealing with domestic strife.
Mhm.
And I would say that that is a real heavy duty topic that everybody should consider seriously. Then you go into genres. You have the same thing in movies as well, where it's just like, oh, it's a horror movie? Okay, well, that's different from, think piece movie where two people are yelling at each other in a room, about their divorce. Weight is distributed differently. And I think that it could stop some writers from writing, like, because all they want to write about is aliens shooting each other. But they're like, "But should I write about something more serious than that?" And I wanted to take the time to tell them to write about the aliens shooting each other and to fuck everybody else. That's it.
Yeah. That's my approach. I realize I have more of a attitude of just I do what I want, and so I don't spend a lot of time because you think about certain books like artists, for example, where they didn't become famous till after their time, and maybe their work wasn't revered in the same way during their time, and then after they died, they're like, "Wow, look at this masterpiece." Maybe that's like an old way of seeing books, that books that are like some of these literary classics that we see, those are the more serious books. But then maybe, however many years from now, they'll be like, wow, look at this change in the landscape of publishing. And we started seeing more of this contemporary romance, or we started seeing more of these horrors. And it was such a shift in the writing world. And now look at these authors like literary genius, like,
Well, it's funny because, like, there's a part of me that just goes, romance is never gonna be a serious genre. I think that it'll always be like, "That book has sex in it," you know? Hmm,
because
well
sex is taboo.
I think so. I think because sex is taboo, I think that it's something that's just like, wait, are you reading it just to, get off? Like, are you reading it for sexual pleasure? Are you treating it like porn? Or are you reading it for some other, like, emotional fruition? And is that valid? It's interesting for me with romance, especially with, like, the stipulation that romances have happy endings. I think that happy endings make books seem less serious to audiences. And, I could make it directly to another point, which is like, oh, so in order to seem serious to an audience, you have to have a bad ending? Is that the shortcut to making a serious book? You just make the ending sad?
Or is it that sex written by a woman is just something that's hard to read and accept? Because I'm thinking about books that are written by men where there's a lot of sex with women and describing the women's breasts, and they're highly revered for their writing. So is it
Are
that
they?
people Yeah,
Wait, okay, wait, hold on. Do you have examples of, like,
George R. R. Martin.
okay, okay. So a lot of the time when he's writing about sex, well, no, hold on, let me think. Let me think. He has this lesbian scene um that is great. He calls this woman's pubic hair the Moorish swamp, I think. It's really funny. I love it.
My God.
I mean, but here's the thing. Yeah, I would actually consider his sex scenes almost less sexual than a romance sex scenes. Like, there is a difference in the writing, and I don't think it's just because he's a man writing the literature or writing the story that we take it more seriously. I do think that, like, when I read this lesbian sex scene, for example, there is something in it that is tied more thematically to the story. He ties the sex to the theme and he ties the sex to the character growth in a way that is different from a romance. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I agree.
See, this makes me get a little deeper into thinking about that because a man writing a sex scene about 2 lesbians, and he's using them as objects to further his plot, whereas in a romance, women are doing it from the woman gaze and doing it from the more emotional side of it. And so people that are reading the man, I mean, maybe we are just influenced by society to see like sex shouldn't be something that we're enjoying from the woman gaze.
I mean, I could definitely agree with that. Like, I could agree that there's something that makes people feel uneasy when you're reading sex in a book and it becomes enjoyable to read, where you're like, "Am I crossing some sort of line? Is
Mhm.
there something happening here? Am I doing something wrong? Is this really needed in the story?" And I think that it's much easier to accept sex in a plot when you feel like it's furthering non-sexual aspects of the plot, i.e., the theme, character, the growth, etc. But the other thing I would say is I would disagree with your first statement,
Mhm.
which is that he's kind of doing a lesbian sex scene and using and objectifying the women in it by using them like a writer uses characters. Because when you write a character, like I'm gonna say this, a character is not a person to me. A character is a conduit for a statement that I'm making. A character is they can have tons of feelings, they can have tons of internal contradiction, they can be real, full of life, three-dimensional, people-ish things, you know? But I'm my purpose as a writer is to push them through their own arc and through the plot and connect them to my themes in a entertaining way for the reader. So I am always objectifying my characters in a sense, you know?
Yeah, I think I am too. I think I was just kind of understanding how sex and women are seen in movies and books and society and how men get away with certain things that women wouldn't. And so to your point that these characters, their sex was there for like the theme and the plot. I was saying that maybe it's more digestible to other people because it's not from a woman perspective. It's more digestible because it's from the man gaze.
Yeah. I I think that well, I basically agree with you, except for the male gaze bit, because the male gaze to me, and you can correct me, has always been more about a sexualization of the object that is being viewed, just the term. And in this sense, it just seems to be that, like, he happens to be a male author writing a sex scene, whereas, like, I agree with everything else that you said,
Uh-huh.
which is basically, I do think that people are uncomfortable with the female perspective of sex.
Mhm.
Especially but they're uncomfortable only when it's enjoyable. They're not uncomfortable
Mhm.
if a female author is writing about, bad sexual experience in detail. I don't think readers think of that as unserious. I think that readers think basically anything that is sad, downcast, tragic, difficult to get through is automatically serious.
Agreed.
And if something is enjoyable, then you go, wait,
Yeah.
like, is this really necessary for the plot? Like, that's I kinda don't even know where to direct this conversation. I'm more
Yeah.
just kind of asking broad questions about, like, what makes a work serious, what makes it not,
Mhm.
because, people will tell you, like, "Oh, okay, yeah, they wrote a silly, romance book," or they wrote a hard-hitting, serious novel.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I don't know, that's
Yeah.
it's one of those things that stops me, from writing, and I just wanted to bring it
Yeah.
up.
I think that that's a wonderful question and something that we should think about. And maybe it's one that, we don't have to have the answer to. We're just talking about it and trying to understand what's going on and, what's contributing to these serious and unserious books. And does it have something to do with the way society views women, the way society views sex, the way society views certain taboo subjects over another? Yeah, I think that this was a really good question to pose, and I think it's okay that we don't know why.
I you know what I'd also love to do?
Hmm,
Throw a tomato.
good transition. Okay, so I chose a topical one. So I did 13 Reasons Why, which
Okay.
is about a girl who essentially gives 13 reasons why she dies from suicide.
Okay. Wait, was that made into a show?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. So I think I actually hated this book. 1 star. I think I
Okay.
actually hated this book. The writing style, the creative storytelling, very good. The story itself, I'm sickened. I'm scared. I don't know what kind of message this will give to young people. The main character deals with the general challenges all high school age kids do, rumors, insecurities, etc. I don't see her life as being any worse than anyone else's I knew from that time in my life, but she dwells on every little detail, on every wrong she's perceived, on every wrong she feels she should have righted. And with a sick twist, she leaves these tapes for the 13 people who made the biggest impact as her parting gift. A gift of blame, of guilt. I don't understand this person at all. I don't agree with her perspective, which I suppose is a huge problem for me. Although the last pages show how these tapes could lead to change for the better in some ways, it's so very unlikely and certainly not worth suicide. I do not recommend this book. If you have teens, please read it before you let them read it. So,
Mhm. I like the I like it when reviews kind of devolve into or not devolve, but like when you can see how introspective the writer of the review was. Like I felt like she was thinking in real time about like why like really why she didn't like it, how she
hmm
could have possibly liked it.
hmm
And I don't know, I found that really I that was a very thought-provoking review for me.
yeah, I think in the beginning when she says outright, I'm scared, I think it's another example of this made her feel something very uncomfortable. They talked about something so taboo. She couldn't put herself in the head of this high school student, and it made her feel scared and uncomfortable. And so she thought, this must be a bad book.
Yeah.
And
I
that's why
think
she
on
gave it
some
1 star.
level, as a writer, you should be searching out those reviews.
hmm
Like, you should be trying to instigate those kinds of reviews because that person might not recommend your book to anybody. They might not recommend it to anybody on Amazon. They'll write a review that's just like, oh man, it brought your numbers down. But you did impact them.
Yeah,
You wrote something that I think is going to stay on this person's mind.
I agree.
And it sounded like they were going to think about it for weeks or months to come, going, "Should I dislike this much as I do? What made me uncomfortable about it?" I feel like I just read a broadened mind.
I agree. I agree. That's one of those examples where I think that bad review is actually a good review.
If you write a book that's a taboo genre, you should expect those kinds of reviews and possibly seek them out.
Yeah.
Well, mine is for Jane Eyre classic. And I picked this review because, well, okay, I'm going to read the review and then I'm going to tell you why I picked it.
Okay.
So it's a 2-star review. You've come a long way, baby. That's its title. The secret to enjoying Jane Eyre, he writes, is to read the first 2/3 and then stop. If you ignore that advice, you might conclude that a woman's ideal role is something akin to slavery, total submission to the other gender. Yuck. And then he goes on further, but I'm going to stop it there. The reason I picked this review, and you're going to laugh at me, is when I was 16, indeed, read the first 2/3 of the book, got to the point where she is about to marry Mr. Rochester, and then
hmm
I put it down. I
Really?
couldn't I couldn't take I couldn't take her going through any more pain. I was just like, "They marry, that's it." Like, I
Well,
don't care about this mystery and, like, who set the fire. I don't care about, like, the sound she hears at night. Like, I am not gonna do any of that. She marries Mr. Rochester, he's happy, and then, like, I looked up the rest because I couldn't take the the faux happy ending in the middle of the book. And so, like, I'm reading this review, and I'm, like, ironically agreeing with them. I'm like, "Yeah, the first
that's
2/3.
hilarious.
But the
Wow.
the rest of the book's so worth it. You should read it. I was wrong. I was 16. I admit it." Yeah, I just was like, "Oh, man." Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Okay, so I guess we'll move on to our reader questions. I have a reader question.
hmm
It's from Timothy. When you develop characters, do you already know who they are before you begin writing, or do you let them develop as you go? I'm curious as to how you would respond to this.
Both. I start off having a very shallow understanding of them. I see my characters as real people, along with them being there for the message of my book. So I see them as a stranger that I'm meeting. And you only see the very surface level characteristics of a stranger, a very basic understanding. But then the longer you get to know them, the more you understand how they would respond to certain situations, you more you see who they are on the inside. And so that's how I approach it. I see them as a stranger, someone I know very on a very basic level, and then as we get to know each other, I start to see who they really are.
Yeah, nice. I like that. Yeah, that's really interesting. I see them because I know my ending and I
Mhm.
know where they're going to end up. I do ask myself, like, I see them as a stranger too. I see them as someone that I like that is malleable, that I'll find out more about as I write, especially in that first draft period. I think a lot of things about their character are up for grabs, but I definitely like have my first impression of
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
And it is a distinct impression. If I want to have a strong character, then I'm going to know the very basics of their character, the thrust of their character, and how they want to be seen in the world. So, as long as I know that, then I feel comfortable in proceeding with writing them, and I think that they're worth it. However, it depends on like, is this your main character or a side character? Because like side characters for me, like I merge side characters. I'll start out with a busy cast, and then I'm like, "Okay, let's just merge these people into one. Let's change the nationality of this person to something else, and let's realign, like, their allegiances are completely different now." And I always wanna keep myself open to that.
I'm always a spectator of what's happening. So sometimes my main character, I feel like they act on their own. So they'll get into all kinds of mischief. Like I've had a book I've written where my main character was, I don't want to give anything away, doing a bunch of or one of the characters in my book was doing a lot more than I wanted them to, changing the story, getting up to all sorts of bad things to the point where I would say, no, you're not about to do that, are you? And then they would do it I was like, "This is not where we're going," and then they would do it, and I'd be like, "Great, now I have to change everything." It's almost like it's out of my hands, and they're out of control, and it really does feel like that, where I'm like, these are, like, live people on a board, and I'm trying to manage them, and they're just being disobedient and doing whatever they want, and I'm trying to corral them. That's what writing
That's
is
so
like for
fun.
me.
I love that. I love that. Okay, well, so I guess that means that I have a question for you now, Sydney.
Alrighty, can't wait.
Um, okay, well, it's kind of a serious question
Mhm.
for traditional publishing in general. It is, are books getting worse because of the fast-paced nature of publishing nowadays?
That is a controversial question.
Yeah. And I guess it's one that we'll have to answer next week on Page Right.
Yes. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. You just listened to Page Fright. Don't forget to like and subscribe and write to us at pagefrightcontact@gmail.com.